but it's one that we have, unfortunately, too much experience and have learned really good lessons about. I think the chief said it himself. He got out there, and when we were here and we were going to do a press conference together yesterday, I agreed with him, get out there and make sure you see changes on the lines, because people can't just push back or swing clubs and hope that there's going to be movement to secure cars that are on fire. At the same time, people who are protesting when there's a car on fire should not be staying there and not getting out of the way. There are better ways to do that. I saw those tactics absolutely improve, and the remarkable restraint, and I do also want to say for the officers that were out there on the line. And you can always find something where the video of one bad thing or something goes wrong, and we all have to live with the accountability of that, and I expect there to be. But the 99.99% of the good restraint that is done by the peace never leads the news, never makes the headlines. But I want to praise it, thank those officers, and ask them to continue to do that. But I'll let the chief talk a little bit more about Texas.
So regarding the tactics that were used yesterday and that was used the day before and that we'll use today and going forward, it's proportionality. Our effort is to de-escalate, our effort is to facilitate. Our efforts also are to protect the safety of our people, as well as the safety of the protesters, those that are present in any demonstration or gathering. What you saw yesterday and what I've seen, what I saw personally on scene, was that process work, that our training and our tools and our tactics was above, I think, certainly well above many's expectations. Many in our community I've heard, why aren't you using tear gas? Why aren't you being more forceful? Why aren't you using more force? These are individuals that should be arrested immediately. And our point of this is that we want to facilitate where possible, and we recognize that the demonstrators are not, or the protesters are not of all one identity. What I saw yesterday, for instance, was many individuals that were there with their grievance and their belief and their right to protest and remain. And as Mayor indicated, their belief, right to protest and remain, despite the fact that behind them were fires, behind them was ongoing dangers to public safety, and they refused, in order of an unlawful assembly, to move. And within the crowd, within a group, within this mass, individuals who took projectiles, bottles, rocks, containers, throwing them, sometimes hitting protesters, other times striking officers, and creating a circumstance of injuries. I have an officer that is presently in the hospital with a fractured skull. He had surgery last night. Mm. I'm hopeful that he will. I believe he will survive, but there was no guarantee when that brick struck him. That was from a group of protesters, many of which believe they were there rightfully, lawfully, and had every authority to remain despite those ongoing assaults. That is one aspect I need the leadership of every advocacy group for every social justice reform to inform, educate, inspire, and insist that when we have an unlawful assembly because of dangers, imminent dangers to people who are present, not just property damage, but the lives and safety of the participants themselves, that the state of this democracy has afforded law enforcement the authority to close that area. There are many that look at that and say, and I heard it yesterday personally, not going to leave. I don't care what you do, I'm not going to leave. In the midst of that, we have missiles coming in, striking officers, injuring people within the crowd. I saw a man on Fairfax, north of 3rd, bloodied because of that type of assault. It's impossible for us to identify who's responsible because we've got a mass of 1,000 people in front of us. So people will question our tactics, they'll question our rights, and we understand that. That's what we should do. We should allow, to the point though of a limit. And when law enforcement, just as if this was a fire or a flood, determines the situation is unsafe, endangers the lives of people who may have absolutely no idea that they're about to die, that we have the authority and the responsibility to close that area, and the participant, the person in that group, has a responsibility to leave. And law enforcement has a responsibility when that does not happen to take action to restore order. And that's what we're trying to do in a manner that is as peaceful and as in a manner of a reverence for life, and a manner of de-escalation as possible. But I will tell you, over the last 4 days, that has been a substantial and one of these lifetime challenges of an episode of how do we do this? And I'm proud of the work that we're going through this. Now, I will say, and absolutely admit, as the mayor indicated, there are instances I personally witnessed. I wasn't satisfied with our response. I thought there was efforts that we could intercede. Sometimes that meant me stepping in front of a skirmish line myself and having conversations to de-escalate both our officers as well as the protesters. Many times, in fact, in nearly every instance, the protesters actually were without the authority. The protesters actually were wrong. But it's like, let me step in here and let us take and show the higher road of opportunity. That's what we're doing in the police department today versus the police department 20, 30, 40 years ago. We're not going to just put force because we have the authority. That's what we stopped, and we have continued to stop because of strong leadership and because of the desire to maintain the public's trust. But there's a member, and a significant member of the public, who look at this narrative from a prior generation, and they believe that our force should be more like what you see in other parts of this country, where you see tear gas and you see police tactics that are extremely strong. So we have individual failures, yes, and I'll investigate each instance, and I'll hold accountable those that violate that trust and my expectation. But let's not have that, while it taints our efforts, it does not define us. Because today, to anyone who believes their rights were abused, I handed out my personal card, business card, to individuals who said, your actions are wrong. Here's my business card. We will take your complaint. I've mobilized our internal affairs. They're 24 hours a day. We will investigate any complaint of misconduct, any complaint of excessive force, any complaint of unlawful arrest. I directed some of those unlawful arrests. If you believe the chief of police arrested you, there's a young woman who was looting a 7-Eleven store along with others. And she was placed under arrest because I was the one that told her to get on the ground. She was under arrest as others were fleeing that store. If she believes that that arrest was unlawful, that I abused my authority, the Board of Police Commissioners will hold me accountable. I welcome that. I welcome that. But let's be clear. We need to change, if we're going to be successful in this dialogue, we need to change from within the stakeholders, that people who are coming to protest need to know that when we say this is an unlawful assembly and it is closed, and they are to leave, and here's the direction you're to travel, and here's the time in which you have to comply. It doesn't matter whether they had any role in that at all. They are obligated by law to do so. And I'm obligated as responsibility to justice and the social control to then restore order. And that means that they sit down and we will arrest them. And they are complete disobedience. And I wish for us to go forward with that exercise. That's how we generally do it.
There's a lot of discussion about whether the tactics were appropriate or heavy-handed or didn't go far enough, but what were your tactics? There had been some criticism that the officers kettled a bunch of protesters right in a district that was a mall and was ripe for looting. What were the actual tactics being used to interact with the large crowds yesterday?
Okay, so I missed a word you said, something about a mall and something else?
The police department was moving tactically across the city to contain and do what you guys do with large crowds of protesters, right?
Not to contain large crowds. So let me explain the tactics on large crowds. The tactics is to understand the freedom of expression, First Amendment right, and to facilitate that. In the city of Los Angeles, despite the fact that you may require a permit in which to have a demonstration, public demonstration, we generally don't require that. In fact, we typically in public areas we facilitate. What the tactics mean on that is we meet with the organizer, we ask to understand what's your nature, your intent, what are you trying to accomplish, how can we help facilitate that. Now they may decide that, well, we intend to take a Beverly and Fairfax, and we intend to sit in the middle of the intersection, and we intend to stay there for the next 3 days. We're going to have a conversation and say, I'm sorry, you can't do that. That your rights of demonstration, while you may believe that the injustices that whatever your grievance is, that is what you should be afforded, we'll give you a reasonable period. And we will impose upon the community and the surrounding community to allow you to express and you to be heard and you to be seen. But we're going to need to move beyond that. Then, and let me finish, because this is not a simple matter. Then, the organizer may say, okay, give us 10, 15 minutes, and we'll facilitate that. We'll communicate to the surrounders, this is what we're doing. There may be other protesters and organizers who say, we're not going to. Okay, well then, we're going to have to proceed to making an arrest for you blocking the roadway. Please, if you would, let's facilitate that. Let's sit down. Does everyone want to be arrested, or just a certain portion? We'll facilitate that.
That stopped, and then unfortunately, as this group that you're looking at here was making their march, there was another group that broke down a gate at the Santa Monica Place. It was like one of those construction gates that keeps people from entering an area in a construction zone. And they broke that gate down, and then we saw probably 50 to 60 people running into the Santa Monica Place. We could
p.m. until 5:30 in the morning, and the fact that that curfew was in effect last night was very helpful to police because they were able to stop and question people and interrogate the situation easier than Friday.
Discussed and has to be dealt with, but even Mr. Floyd's family has begged for peaceful demonstrations, and it's falling on deaf ears, and that's why I am convinced that those that are doing the looting are using the peaceful protesters as a distraction in order to do what they're doing. And I think it is outrageous and appalling that this is happening. And as far as LA County goes, I take great county, but in the state and this country. But when I started 30 years ago with the county and where we are today, we are in the difference between night and day.
I'm guessing you were in LA in 1992 with the Rodney King riots. Are you seeing any similarities, or is it bringing back memories for you?
I think that what scares me about this is that usually they wait till dark and then you start to see the looting. And what I'm seeing is total lack of respect for any sort of law enforcement at all, or even the laws. And the looting is taking place during the day. And they're actually wearing masks, but I don't think they're wearing them out of concern for COVID, quite frankly. But that's the difference to me, is that usually these type of displays take place in the dead of night, and now you're seeing it in daylight and with cameras rolling, and they don't care. They don't care.
I know it's so heartbreaking. Business owners who are scared, but what about local residents? Because we saw just yesterday there were people who were seeing protesters climb their buildings, scale the walls, and it was very frightening for a lot of people. So as the community hope that we don't have to speak with you again about this, but we'll be in touch on how this all unfolds. So thank you so much, Supervisor.
Thank you, and you be safe, and tell your reporters to be safe as well, please.